Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Starcraft 2 Heart of the Swarm? Let's do it. Why not? Seems reasonable, doesn't it? It's what I've been spending the last 6-7 hours playing, so why not make a video about it? Heart of the Swarm is, of course, the expansion to Starcraft 2, the original game being Wings of Liberty. Heart of the Swarm has now just popped up and is available to play. It's an expansion to the original. It is not a standalone. That means you need the original game in order to play this. And this is the second of 3 planned campaigns. This one focusing primarily on Sarah Kerrigan and the Zerg. Needless to say, this is a game by Blizzard Entertainment. You should kind of know that by now. And I'm going to focus this video for the most part on the single player and what I think of the pacing so far, as well as the mechanics that are being used, the various gimmicks employed throughout the campaign, as well as things like the story and the voice acting. There is basically no way to do this video without there being at least minor mission spoilers, because every mission is story-based. So whatever I show you could be considered minor spoilers. The good news is that those of you watching this probably haven't played Wings of Liberty or had no real interest in picking up Heart of the Swarm. If you had, well, you'd own the game already and you'd be playing it and not watching this video, so that's my logic. But regardless, be warned, there will be minor spoilers throughout this video. I will endeavor to avoid main story missions and do side stuff, but even that is pretty damn relevant to the plot. We'll have a look at a few things before we go into the campaign, though, as well as explore some of the different functionality that's available. For the most part, I'm going to avoid multiplayer, but I will tell you a little bit about some of the features that the new multiplayer matchmaking has and things like that. Firstly, let's dip into options. As always, StarCraft 2 has a fairly ridiculous option set. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they've optimized the game at all, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. The previous game had this problem too, and once you crank everything up to maximum, it seems to kill whatever machine you throw at it. In the campaign, in very large battles, I've had the frame rate drop down to 20, which is extremely low. And this, for me, has been a constant problem over the past couple of years of casting, and I've experienced it at major tournaments and all sorts of things like that. StarCraft 2 on Ultra just doesn't run very well, as far as I can tell. I don't know why. Can't really figure it out. I mean, it's not a great-looking game. It never has been, but for some reason, it just doesn't run all that well. I've tweaked the shadows slightly because those seem to be one of the big performance drains, but who knows? It seems like something I'll have to spend a lot of time tweaking. Aside from that, you've got a significant amount of options, even in the sense of sound. I mean, being able to mess around with pretty much everything here is absolutely phenomenal. You could even take individual things like response sounds off, error sounds. You can have audio ducking during alerts. I mean, it's pretty insane, quite frankly. We're going to put subtitles on for this one. Yeah. It's got everything you could possibly desire. A few different things available for Heart of the Swarm, including being able to pick your menu screen background, switch between the expansion and the previous one, enable stuff like damaged unit life bars, which is quite nice. That means it won't display the life bars unless your unit has been damaged. That takes away a lot of screen clutter, and you can even load custom observer interfaces and all sorts of different crazy stuff. Lots and lots of things available there, and you can also tweak your social settings, language packs, and so on and so forth. You can even switch your language over to different languages. If you want to experience the game in Korean, you can do that. Won't make you any better at the game, just making you aware of that. Now, on the matchmaking and multiplayer side of things, they've put in a new suite of training in order to kind of get you ready for multiplayer. As you can see there, that's your kind of stage 1. You can then go against the AI. This apparently does give you some placement stuff, and it's going to try and figure out exactly what's going on in terms of your skill level. And then it's going to try and place you. And then you've got unranked and ranked play available. Unranked is very nice for a lot of people because they suffer from so-called ladder anxiety. Also very good if you want to practice a different race without ruining your rank in the actual ladder itself. And there, of course, is the ultimate ranked play. You can skip straight to that, or you can go through the training in versus AI, and it will try and give you a better set of opponents instead of throwing you up against 5 Master League guys. So that's nice. I will eventually do my placements probably on stream once I get back from MLG Dallas. Custom games are, of course, also available, as well as replays. This time around, you can actually create a replay with others, as you can see here. Watch with others. This is pretty important. And you can do some incredibly cool stuff, like jump into the replay and actually play it, which is astonishing, really, when you think about it. So if you get a pro replay, you're watching it with friends, you can actually jump into the control of the units of a pro player and play it your way against friends. I think there's all sorts of really great ideas there, and that's all available, of course, if you have any replays, which I currently do not. Aside from that, the arcade, this is something you may have seen in the previous version, but if you're not familiar with StarCraft 2, this is where most of the custom modded stuff is available, so you want to play stuff like Kobold Tribes, Catch and Run, Poker Defense Revolution, Starship Troopers. There's all sorts of different things available, and it's not ideal. I mean, they do need to make some changes to it, but they are doing a much better job this time around of making the interesting games more accessible and giving you extra stuff like this. I mean, this is an MMO, essentially, within StarCraft 2 called StarCraft Universe, very much in the style of World of Warcraft. There's a lot of really crazy stuff available here. So when you buy StarCraft 2, you don't just buy StarCraft 2, you buy every game that could potentially be created with it, of which there are some fun things. I mean, there's some cool Dota clones and things like that, but not necessarily all that many killer apps yet. We don't have our Dota, we don't have our... I'm trying to think of some other examples. I mean, Tides of Blood would be another good example, and of course a couple of other mods for various games in the past. We do not have that yet. Hopefully we will get it, though. Now, let's get on to the main purpose of this video, which is to actually have a look at the campaign and the structure of the campaign. Once again, spoilers incoming. You have been warned for the last time. Alright, let's get in it. So, I have beaten 17 missions so far. I have actually been playing this... I started playing at 3 AM last night, played all the way through at about 7 AM, then went to sleep, then got back up and started playing it again. Because, hey, StarCraft is a passion of mine. Those of you who don't know, I go to major tournaments to do commentary there. That's kind of my passion project, also a little bit of a professional thing. That's what I do. And I even have an entire channel dedicated to StarCraft over at youtube.com/TotalBiscuit. So, if you hate StarCraft, then you suck. But regardless, if you hate StarCraft, you can avoid all of that by simply not watching that channel. But if you do like it, you might want to subscribe to youtube.com/TotalBiscuit, which is where I do my casts and also reports on the esports team that I sponsor by the name of Axiom. So, let's continue, shall we, and have a look and see what's going on with this. And I will explain the way the campaign is structured, and we can talk about the good points and the not-so-good points. I shall load into that. Loading times are actually surprisingly long, considering I'm running on an SSD. It does take a little bit of time to actually get everything loaded in, which is a little bit unfortunate. StarCraft's never been fast to load, but I actually have the feeling that Heart of the Swarm loads slightly slower, which is, as I said, a little bit unfortunate. And you'd think it wouldn't take like 30 seconds to load into this, but it does, for whatever reason. So we're going on to a mission here. I don't believe this is optional, although actually I could be wrong. But looking at the next mission, it seems like you could probably skip this one entirely, but we're going to go with this one anyway. And this mission actually has a character who you may recognize from StarCraft 1. No, not him. Not him. Now, it seems to have started me at a really awkward point where I was actually losing this mission. I'm currently playing on hard difficulty, and I think I'm probably going to have to restart. So, let's do that. Let's actually... do I have to lose first? I would have thought if I just click end game. There we go, restart mission. Excellent. No, let's not do that. Let's go back to the Leviathan and show you that first. There we go. So this is pretty important because this is the hub for all of your adventures, and you may remember if you played the original StarCraft 2, there is a ship there called the Hyperion, and that is what you hang around in, and you do your research, and you talk to different people there, and then you go to the next mission. This is pretty similar. This is the Leviathan. This is where you hang around. These are all of your advisors, who you will sort of collect throughout. This guy is Alexei Stukov. Yes, indeed. He was a character in StarCraft 1. He returns as a super powerful infested Terran whose agenda is unclear at this time. All of these characters you can talk to, and you can have a few conversations with them. It seems like my attempt to put on subtitles failed miserably. That's unfortunate. Let's try that again, shall we? Where's the options menu going? Go down to sound, display subtitles. Obviously didn't lock in last time. There we go. So I'll give you a little bit of dialogue. Some of these are really interesting, actually. I'm going to go talk to one of the most interesting characters before we go into the mission, because there's a lot of personality here.
Skygar Station, the Dominion's secret weapons lab. This is the heart of Mengsk's hybrid breeding program.
Tell me about the hybrid.
Zerg and Protoss DNA combined. Something that should not be possible.
And these creatures will follow Mengsk's orders?
He believes they will. I am not so sure.
It's pretty nice voice acting for the most part. There's a lot of side story that is revealed by talking to all of these characters. This one I like in particular, but my favorite character is down in the evolution pit, and we'll talk about the mechanics here as well while we go on. So, have a listen to this guy. He's pretty awesome.
Pain valuable feedback for organism. Organism with heightened pain receivers must experiment. Perfection. Deep in the core. In strands. Organism Stukov. Product of incredible workmanship.
He's actually a pretty cool character. He speaks in a very odd way, but he's every now and again going to be able to crack a line that is quite humorous. So, what is this? Well, this is the evolution pit. Now, here you can customize your units in between missions. These are the units I've acquired so far. And you also get these so-called evolution missions, which will allow you to take your basic unit and evolve it to one of 2 mutually exclusive strains. Once they're locked in, that's it. You can't change them. You can, however, mutate. This is all done in between missions, and you can pick one of 3 different upgrades before the mission. You can change it whenever you like. So in this case, I got Metabolic Boost, because who the hell wouldn't put speed on Zerglings? That's a pretty crazy idea. Adrenal Overload is also available. It shows you what you can do there. In this case, 50% attack speed, and then 10 maximum life here with Hardened Carapace. Now, this guy is a Swarmling. This is a variant on the Zergling, and this guy can morph almost instantly, and he spawns in groups of 3 rather than 2. Very, very good if you just want to completely swarm and swamp your enemy. In this case, well, here's a Hydralisk. He's a pretty little Hydralisk, because he's actually a Lurker. And you may remember Lurkers from Brood War. You should. They were one of the main Zerg units, and he can morph into a Lurker, which then allows him to burrow and send spikes under the ground. His upgrades include Frenzy, which is an activatable attack speed buff, Ancillary Carapace, which is 20% life, and then range upgrade to 6. Some of the upgrades are interesting, some of them not so much. Some of them are just copied from the main base game, like, say, the Roach Tunneling Claws here is a good example of that. I'm going to increase the Roach armor, actually. Sounds like a plan. Tunneling Claws for this mission are not going to be all that helpful. There's also I don't even know, Hydro Bile, and that's plus damage against light units. We're going to go for Adaptive Plating this time around. In fact, I want to customize my units for this mission, because I know what's going to be coming at me, so I'm going to keep the speed, because, like, why wouldn't you? That's just kind of insane. My Hunter Banelings, these are awesome. They jump off cliffs. They're really quite awesome. I like them a lot. Rupture. This is a massive blast radius. I would pretty much keep this. There's also the ability to heal targets that are around you when the Baneling explodes, which is quite neat. Baneling has some of the most interesting abilities. My Mutalisk set up with Sundering Claws, which is a massive plus damage to Armored. You can actually get Vicious Glaive, which has 6 bounces, which is pretty ridiculous, as you can see all over there. So I very much like what they've done here. This, in my opinion, is an improvement on what they did in Wings of Liberty with the Armory and the Research Lab. The ability to switch between different units, and then, of course, evolve each of your units with a unique strain, which is often very powerful and really quite unusual. Is very nice indeed. Now, your hero this time around, of course, is Kerrigan, and Kerrigan can be upgraded as she levels up. I'm currently level 48, maximum level, I believe, as you can see here, is 70, which is interesting because you only get abilities at level 60 there by the looks of it. And you can once again switch between all of these as well. You can choose between 3 different abilities as you go along, and we've got Wild Mutation there, which is something I like to use, although I may switch this out because I'm not entirely convinced by its usefulness. There's also an AoE heal, the ability to randomly, well, not so much randomly, but deliberately spawn free Banelings. I've got twin drones here. That means that drones spawn in packs at no additional cost. So useful. Improved overlords, Sonic Shift, Leaping Strike, and so on and so forth. And go all the way up to maximum level where you get stuff like Apocalypse, Summon a Leviathan, drop pods with Primal Zerg, and so on and so forth. It's pretty crazy. And as I said, you can switch between all of them. So it's more like the kind of Warcraft 3 style of where you always have this persistent hero who is leveling up throughout the campaign. This is not something that was in Wings of Liberty. Alright, so let's go into the mission then, shall we? And we shall give it a try.
The vanguard of your swarm holds the entrance of the lab. The hybrid wait within. Let's send them to hell.
This is not easy. Speaking of easy, normal is very, very easy. Hard is a little bit of a challenge, so you can't really mess around. Brutal is, according to the Starcraft subreddit, the kind of thing you should be playing if you are at least gold level Zerg or higher on the ladder. So if you're an experienced Starcraft player, you should be playing Brutal. Some are arguing right now that...
Be quick. I have a battle to command.
I must warn you about the being that runs this lab. Dr. Narud. An ancient shapeshifter who has worn many faces over the years. He made me what I am.
So he's not a Terran. Protoss? He can't be Zerg or I would know.
None of those. He is the servant of an ancient Zelnaga known as Amon.
I learned of Amon on Xeris. He's dead.
Well, his creation lives on. Narud is the most dangerous being you've ever met. And you will face him in there.
Alright. Difficulty-wise, there's been some criticism of this so far, claiming that Brutal difficulty is easier than Wings of Liberty's was. Wings of Liberty actually did challenge a lot of people, including pro-gamers at times, especially on the last mission, although that may just have been the way that the missions were designed and the fact that the difficulty curve was not consistent. There were some missions which were just an absolute nightmare, and some which you could absolutely steamroll. It's difficult for me to comment, honestly, because I didn't finish the Wings of Liberty campaign. I just never got around to it. I played about 3/4 of the way through, and then just kind of stopped, and I think I was playing on hard, and it was reasonably challenging, but I don't know. It's certainly possible that if you played Wings of Liberty on Brutal and you beat it multiple times, then you're going to absolutely wreck this campaign. Okay, here we go. Let's get in on this, shall we? This game is consistently full of things which will really, really bother people that are very much into the immersion and like to nitpick logic. Yeah? The game is often illogical in the sense of, we're inside a facility and then for some reason you can mine Vespene gas within it and mine resources. What? I mean, you're inside a man-made facility. Why would there be gas vents and things like that all over the place? It's a little bit silly, but they have to do that really if they want to actually keep the tile set interesting. And oh look, it's Tyrael. Yeah, quite. In this case, we'll be establishing a hatchery, and then we'll be doing some pretty standard RTS gameplay, but along with Wings of Liberty, what they try to do with each mission is shake it up with some unique mechanics. Although, more often than not, this time around, they seem to be going very much for the, oh, if you don't do this in time, then you die thing, especially as we go later on into the game. It's not the majority of missions by any stretch of the imagination, but it does seem to be the most overwhelming and overriding mechanic that I have seen up to this point. Alright, now I'm going to have to try and kill this hybrid, and I'm going to have to do so pretty quickly, because it's currently draining my health. So we're going to go in there. I'm going to send the Aberration in first because he's just a little bit better at tanking damage. In the meantime, let's hotkey my hatchery and start getting my drone count up. Pull the Zerglings back. And then move them in behind. Go with a little bit of a leap and buff my creatures up just a little bit using some of my abilities. Zerglings are going to die. Doesn't matter. That's kind of what they're good for. And then we can take this hybrid down without too much of a problem. He's going to kill a lot of my stuff, but that's to be expected. I'm going to move the Aberration out now, actually, because I'd like to just keep him around for a while. Let's build a few more drones. Now, on this mission, I believe they only give you one base, which does make the mission quite challenging, because you've got to be very careful with your unit selection. On other missions, you get enough bases, usually 2 or 3, where you can just spam units, at least on this difficulty level, and you can usually just make your way through, especially if you happen to be specced out with swarmlings and things like that. Okay. Right, we're looking good on work account, so let's start to get some upgrades. I'm going to get my Roach Warren up pretty much immediately here. And I am probably going to also add something a little bit more advanced. Maybe a Hydralisk Den. Yeah. Or possibly an infestation pit for swarm hosts. Hydras might be a good idea. I'll also need to start mining a little bit more gas. Now, the mission here is to destroy all 7 hybrids without being horribly murdered, which is more challenging than you might initially think. It's not particularly easy. I'm going to add a second hatchery on here so I can get some more lava as well. Now, the diversity of the missions this time around is pretty good. There are actually some fairly magnificent examples of some really, really good mission design in this game. There are also some examples of missions which are like, oh, it's an escort or it's a timed defense. There's actually quite a lot of timed defense involved. It's like, oh, right, oh, yeah, great. I've got to defend against this until X amount of time, and then it's going to get really hectic towards the end, and so on and so forth. Game does have quite a lot of boss battles as well. They're almost in the style of World of Warcraft raids. In fact, I would say that's exactly what they are, and what they were designed around. Scripted bosses with rotations and various abilities, and if you get them down to a certain health, they're going to do different things, and so on and so forth. Okay, it looks like we're going to get attacked, so I'm going to get my Hydralisks out, and I don't think I can morph any of them into lurkers. I think, yeah, first things first, I actually need a lurker den, so I'm going to get some more Zerglings out nice and quickly. Should also add my second hatchery onto the hotkey, make sure I don't forget that. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit messy. Warhounds, no, Hellhounds, I don't even know what they're called. I can't even remember the names of it. This is not boding well for my MLG experience here. Now, what you're seeing there is, of course, the Hellbat and the Hellion, which are nasty little units indeed, especially if you happen to be using Zerglings. So I'm going to back my hero unit off. Now, Kerrigan can die during the campaign, except on missions where it specifically says that she can't. And that's actually fine. I mean, you will... Kerrigan. Kerrigan. Okay, thank you. There's a couple of interesting bugs in this game, this being one of them. They, for some inexplicable reason, have quite a few instances of the game's audio bugging out and repeating the same line over and over again. This happened to me probably about 3 or 4 times, so you know, it's definitely a thing. I'm not just making it up. It's a minor bug for the most part. I haven't seen any scripting errors or anything major within the campaign so far, so I guess that's probably the biggest concern, and I'm glad that that's not happening. There we go. And now I've got my lurkers working on here. And we can just go and destroy these bunkers and make our way through to the hybrid. That should do the trick. I'll happily sacrifice some Zerglings to make that happen. Should also get our evolution chamber up and start with the upgrades. There we go. Nice, nice, nice. The actual scripting of the missions is really quite good for the most part, although you do have to get around the fact that since it's an RTS view, things that you would hope would look really cool, they generally don't. They actually look pretty stupid most of the time, like things just disappearing into vehicles instead of boarding them properly and so on and so forth. Oh, okay, it would appear that these things actually have vision. That's unfortunate. Oh wow, they actually pull lurkers out of the ground. This is terrible. This is really, really awkward. Let's make some more units. I'm going to get some roaches out. And I think we can probably look for an upgrade as well once I've got the gas for it. As I said, I don't think there's another base here on this map, so... which is kind of lousy. I don't think I can even fight this straight up. Alright, I'm going to have to go and get my roaches. And this lurker's going to die if I don't get him out of there. Ooh, there we go. Excellent. These roaches are called Vile Roaches. They are a rather nice upgrade, which causes an... oh, this is not the time. It causes a slowing effect on both attack and movement. It's pretty overpowered, and in my opinion, by far the best variant, although a lot of other people really enjoy the other variant, which is the Corpser variant, which ends up being something which splits off into lots of little mini roaches from corpses and crazy stuff like that. It's really quite neat. Spread our creep out just a little bit more here. Just trying to keep up on various things. I'm not mining optimally. Let's get an upgrade to missile attacks. I just don't want to lose too many units here, because last time around I really drained my economy down to pretty much nothing, and I ended up in a nasty situation. Now, what's going to happen in a lot of these missions is they give you optional side objectives. In fact, almost every mission in the game actually has that. And they will usually give you bonus Kerrigan levels, as well as units and occasional nice things like that. And I definitely appreciate the fact that they're there. It makes the campaign significantly more interesting. This is looking a bit messy. We should win this, but we're going to lose a lot of units in the process, which I don't like. There we go. Smash our way through there. I'm going to need more roaches and probably some hydralisks in the background as well, actually. Sweet. That's now been dealt with. Ah, there is another base I can take. Good, good. This shall make matters significantly easier. Nice. I find a lot of the stuff in the game contrived from a story perspective. And I think it's just because what they try and do is they try and gel the story with the fact that they're shoehorning in mechanics to make the game interesting. And one of the things you can say about Wings of Liberty and StarCraft 2 in general is that it's got a really interesting single-player campaign, which for the most part doesn't really happen in RTS. There are a few exceptions, stuff like Homeworld, of course, and then things like Company of Heroes, some of the Command & Conquers. Not all of them. I mean, for God's sake, a lot of the earlier Command & Conquers would just destroy this, destroy this, destroy this, which is not that interesting. StarCraft 2 probably has one of the most varied campaigns that I've seen, and that's absolutely phenomenal. It's really, really good that they have managed to vary up the mission so much. There's some crazy stuff. There's one where you have to infest a Protoss ship, and oh, that is good. That is a really, really good mission. One of the most interesting and innovative missions that I've actually seen in quite some time, simply because the way that it's designed is so completely different to what you usually see in other real-time strategy campaigns. So I'm definitely impressed by that. Admittedly, it's not unexpected, because again, that's exactly what we got from Wings of Liberty as well. If you're looking for a really interesting campaign, I mean, you should probably be playing StarCraft 2, at least in the case of Wings of Liberty, because it has got some really cool stuff going on with it. Very, very cool stuff going on with it. And I appreciate that they do that. However, if you're looking for something really, really story-driven, while this is definitely story-driven, you're occasionally going to find some absolutely ridiculous things that just don't make any sense, designed in such a way, it would appear, as to just be challenging for the sake of challenging without making a lick of sense from a storyline perspective. I think it's probably time to back my units off a little bit here. This is getting a bit messy. Let's get some more roaches in there. I also need to drone up here, actually. There we go. Get that second base fully operational. Okay, at least my hydralisks can now try and contribute to this. Let's buff my guys up a little bit. There we go. Whew, that was a stressful one. Each of these hybrids has a different ability, I've noticed, which, again, is very, very nice, and it shows the amount of mechanical detail that they've got going on in this game. However, as I was saying earlier, the problem that this game often has is gelling the story in a logical and sensible way with the mechanics. There's one mission, for instance, where a supposed reputed general, a guy that knows exactly what he's doing and has won many, many campaigns. I mean, this guy is an absolute boss. Just does the stupidest things. And he just keeps sending these really, really slow ships at you over and over and over again. And it's like, I understand why it's doing it, because there's a particular gimmick and mechanic that Blizzard wanted to implement for that level. So that's what they made him do. But there's no way in a million years that it makes any sense. It makes some of the antagonists in this game just sound utterly ridiculous. It's like, there's no way you would do this. It's dumb. What are you doing, guys? And that, I think, is something that Wings of Liberty suffered from as well, and perhaps this game does too. And you've got to be able to get over the cheesiness of it, because those mechanics are completely laid bare. They make no attempt to hide the fact that there's some gimmicky mechanic going on, because they want you to play this mission in a particular fashion. So they make no effort to change that. So if you can't handle that fact, and you get very easily shaken by some of the immersion-breaking stuff, then you're going to find yourself just yelling every now and again, oh, come on. You can't do something like that. Protoss, for instance, a supposedly incredibly advanced race of aliens, at least in the first few missions, are some of the dumbest I have ever seen in my life. They employ this same stupid strategy over and over again. And it's not because the AI is stupid, it's because the mission's scripted that way. You got to understand that with StarCraft 2, the RTS campaign element of it is heavily scripted, one of the most heavily scripted RTS campaigns there is. And for the most part, like in most games, I would say, oh god, it's terrible. But the thing about RTS is that scripting in RTS can actually lead to a much more interesting experience, which is something that doesn't usually happen in other games. RTS campaigns, for the most part, for the longest time, were little more than exercises in skirmishes. Yeah, they were just a set of skirmishes on different maps. And the AI would do the same thing every bloody time, and then that would be that. So Blizzard's approach was, let's take the standard RTS experience and just make it really, really scripted. And that means that there's always something paced. The missions are deliberately designed in such a way. Doesn't mean that you don't have any freedom. You actually do have quite a significant degree of freedom. And you can approach a level in your own way. I mean, I've beaten several missions by just going full-on macro mode and just smashing everything with Zerglings. Even though the game's like, well, you know, there's probably a composition here that you should be using. But it doesn't really matter that much because the game lets you have a little bit of freedom, which is always nice to see. Oh, dear. Yeah, I think things are starting to get messy. There you go. Taking the hybrid out. Time to get back to base. Unfortunately, we are being attacked by a fairly significant number of nasty little bastards. Send my Zerglings in. I have a couple of Hydralisks, not that many. Yeah, this is actually going to suck. Please don't kill me. I need more Hydralisks. That's a lot of air power they have there. Also... Oh, come on. Don't go like this. This is a really nasty engagement, actually. It's Banshees and then siege tanks in the background, which make things really, really difficult to deal with. And I don't really have enough gas to produce enough Hydralisks here. I need to take these Banshees out, but I'm not really sure what I'm going to take them out with. Hydralisks are not exactly that durable, unfortunately. I should have prepared with some Spore Crawlers, actually. That would have helped. There we go. I think we may be able to break this. And then just send a wave of Zerglings down in that direction. Kerrigan's still alive, so I can send her in. There we go. Send a wave of Zerglings to kill the siege tanks. I took a lot of damage there, unnecessarily, I feel. There we go. All sorted out. For the most part, I would say that the game remains consistently interesting. There's a couple of missions so far that I've said, yeah, this is a little bit of a dud. Like, it wasn't as exciting as I'd hoped, but for the most part, the missions remain sufficiently varied to stay interesting pretty much all the time. That takes a lot of effort. Time to get my Roach Warren back up and rebuild my Hydra Den, because I did lose that. Let's also get my Evolution Chamber back in play. I need more money. I also need more units, so let's just build a bunch more Zerglings. I can always turn these into Banelings if I so desire, and then... In fact, I should show you the Banelings, because they're really quite fun. Bouncing little bastards is what they are. Very, very mean. There we go, let's gather our group up. So this is a significant size of an army now. And I've got 4 minutes to kill this hybrid. It's really pushing me along here. The hybrid's actually over there, but I'm going to go get the Brutalisk out first. That gives me an extra unit that I can use. He's pretty powerful. What I also like about the StarCraft campaign is that they throw in a lot of units which aren't in the multiplayer. Stuff that's pretty much impossible to balance. And as a result, there's a bunch of really fun stuff. Because the game says, you know what, it doesn't matter if this stuff is balanced or not. Because we can script the campaign in such a way that it will work. Whereas you can't really do that with the multiplayer. You've got to keep those units balanced and make sure that you don't end up completely wrecking the competitive scene of the game. There we go. Just overwhelm this position. Free the Brutalisk, and then we're going to use that to go and smack the hybrid around a little bit. Okay, so it's all the way over there. I'm going to have to push through some entrenched Terran defenses there by the looks of it. Which is a little lousy, but nothing we can't handle. Let's get some more Overlords out. And we can get some Hydras out. Sounds like a reasonable plan. Oh dear. This is going to be a lot of dead lings if I don't do this right. Pull them back. That was so stupid. I shouldn't have even engaged there. Not that I can't replace the lings, but that was kind of a waste. Let's send the roaches in first. Micromanagement is required, especially at the higher levels. Just throwing the same thing at enemies over and over again is probably not going to work out so well. The game seems to... I don't think the game deliberately picks that. I think it's the way that they actually designed the game itself is done in such a way that they know what kind of units you're probably going to be using at a given time, so they immediately throw something a little bit different at you to keep things challenging, and it works pretty well for the most part, from what I can tell. There we go, we can smash the rest of that up, and we have a lot more Hydralisks now as well. Turn some of those into Lurkers, I think, and then just obliterate the rest of this nonsense. Thank you very much. I should also go and spread my creep a little bit more. As you can see, I'm not moving all that quickly, that's why. Performance-wise, as I said, there are some problems. This mission's okay, but I've had some missions drop down to 20 frames per second, which is not well optimized. StarCraft 2, they always say it runs on everything, and they're right, it does. The problem is that it doesn't run well on anything. Like, unless you are at the lowest possible settings, then it is not a game that runs well on many systems. But it does run. Yeah? It's kind of just like World of Warcraft, right? You know, WoW, for the longest time, was just awful in that regard. There were so many problems in terms of the fact that the game just did not run all that well at all on a system that you would have thought it would run absolutely phenomenally on. And it's not a very advanced-looking game, is it? Absolutely not. And yet, there were problems. Lots and lots of problems. Blizzard actually seems to suffer from this in general. They make games that will run on anything and then just won't run well on anything. Which is a shame. Uh-oh. Oh, dear. Time to get back home. Looks like they are not messing around this time. Worst thing is my Hydralisks are about to pop and they might get absolutely murdered very quickly. I'm going to at least lose a hatchery here. Oh, those were roaches I was building. Okay. Well, I can mostly fight here. Let's just buff the roaches up a little bit, get into the center of the fight. And then we can beat all of these guys back. I'm going to need another hatchery to replace that one. Make sure I'm producing enough lava. Good, good. That's much, much better. In fact, I might need a couple more hatcheries. I'm actually stockpiling a lot of cash here. But as you've probably noticed, I don't really have all that many places to mine, so I'm not entirely convinced that it's going to remain that way. So I'm going to be very, very careful with the units that I actually build. I get some queens and some roaches, very, very durable, especially since I upgraded... Did I get the upgrade for that? What was it? Adaptive plating, yes, so their armor goes up once they hit 50% health. So, overall, what do I think of the campaign so far? It's pretty fantastic. The storytelling is, for the most part, pretty good, although there's some definitely cringeworthy stuff at the start. Speaking of cringeworthy stuff at the start, the game insists on throwing this absolutely ridiculous tutorial at you, which actually has the biggest example of this massive cringeworthy gamey disconnect between the narrative and what's actually going on. It quite literally tells you in the tutorial, it's like, morph a drone, morph an overlord, and there's real characters telling you to do this stuff. And like, you kidding me? This is not real terminology. There's no way you should be saying this. It's a massive fourth wall breaker. Also, the fact that the tutorials are actually paced in a really slow manner and are completely unnecessary for people that have played StarCraft 2 before really gets on my nerves. In fact, the first 3 missions of this game are just weak sauce. The second mission is just you kind of running through a facility, and it is not that interesting. It's very hard to die. Dialogue's not that great. But once everything goes down and Kerrigan starts on a journey, a rip-roaring rampage of revenge, then that's when things start to really kick into high gear. And I think it's mostly because you happen to be dealing with this race of alien beings that is nothing like humanity. And that makes things super interesting. You've got characters that are just... their motivations just don't... they're not as obvious as a human would be. And they can put all sorts of interesting personality traits in there that are very intriguing. And there are some great characters on the Zerg side of things, to the point, actually, where I think I like the Zerg characters way more than anything they've put out previously. They did a really good job when it came to giving personality to what were otherwise considered just to be mindless, hive mind-controlled insect alien creatures. You know, they're pretty fantastic in that regard. I was very, very impressed. There we go. Almost lost Kerrigan. Didn't happen, thankfully. Let's get some more lings. Let's get some of these bouncing banelings out. Oh, I don't have a baneling nest. Come on. Build a baneling nest. Got some more roaches over there. We're going to need some more hydras as well. I have a feeling they're going to throw more flying crap at me. Ooh, I'm going to have to engage pretty quickly here, unfortunately, because I only have 1 minute left before my life gets drained by this little bastard. Zergling's probably not the ideal thing to be throwing at something that's got splash damage, but we can buff their health up, which will make things significantly better. A lot of Psy-storming, a lot of nonsense going on. Reminds you probably of a lot of WoW raid bosses, and rightfully so. This one's kicking in its illusions as well. Kerrigan's got a decent amount of health.
You surprise me.
Alright, 2 more hybrids to deal with before the end of this particular mission. Good, 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 good. We should get a couple more queens in here for healing. The weird thing about the single player is that they actually take units which are in the multiplayer and have them work differently. Like, for some reason, this entire campaign, they didn't bother to allow you to do the so-called lava inject, which is something that you could do in the multiplayer to speed up your production. It's a key mechanic of playing Zerg properly. And they just completely removed that for the single player. I guess they just believed that it was too complex or just not fun enough and something you shouldn't really be focusing on. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that, honestly, they should have left it in there simply because it's a useful skill to learn for multiplayer. And you can learn some skills in the single player for multiplayer. And it would have been really nice to actually be able to do that. But they decided no, they wouldn't do that. They also changed the roles of the queens. The queens have this sort of auto-cast heal. So they kind I wouldn't say they're like a medic because they heal periodically instead of with a consistent beam. Alright. Let's ramp everything up, get as many units to the front as I can. Get some more Zerglings. I've got a bunch of Banelings in here as well. My army's fairly considerable. I haven't found the other Brutalisk. That's an optional objective, but I just want to try and beat this mission and not lose again, so we'll go for it. I guess I understand why some of the units get changed around, and obviously it's cool to see stuff like the Lurker coming back, the Brutalisk. This is all stuff that you can't actually use in the multiplayer mode, so it gives a good amount of diversity. However, there are some really curious changes and dissonances between the multiplayer and the single player in that respect. And I don't know if I fully like that. You saw my little Banelings jumping in there? Yeah, they're pretty fantastic. I love my Banelings. I have a lot of love for the Banelings. Best unit in Starcraft as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what's going on here, so I'm just going to attack a lot and hope for the best. Seems to be working okay so far, so we'll go with that. I have pretty much an overwhelming force here, so I think I should have nailed this down quite nicely. Oh no, it's a Viking! Not anymore, it isn't. There we go. There's some other nice improvements that have been made as well. Physics, for instance, has been improved significantly. Stuff falls out of the sky properly for the most part. When things die, they come apart, they slide across the floor. When they get hit by a big impact, they get thrown into the air. A lot of this is in multiplayer rather than in single player, which is kind of weird. There's like way more physics simulation there as far as I can tell. But regardless, it's neat nonetheless. So for the most part, I'm having a lot of fun with this. I think it's a pretty damn good single-player campaign for a real-time strategy. And if you've been ignoring StarCraft 2 up to this point, thinking, I don't want to play this in multiplayer, then there is a reason to get it and play it in single-player, because the campaign is pretty good. Storyline-wise, it starts off pretty weak, but I think things start to really ramp up as you get further in, and that's always nice to see. There is some cheese, but nowhere near as much as in the Wings of Liberty campaign. I think, again, it helps that you don't have human characters, you've got Zerg characters. And there's a kind of crazy theme going on, really, that your main character isn't really a heroine in any way. Actually, a lot of the stuff she does is pretty damn deplorable, and as a result, that makes the narrative and the way that the game progresses a hell of a lot more interesting than it otherwise would be. And in Wings of Liberty, it's just straightforward kind of good guy rebelling against the Empire, blah, 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 trying to save his girlfriend, so on and so forth. This game, no, that's not really it. At least not at this stage through the game. And I expected, I think, a lot more kind of inner struggle with Kerrigan. And there's actually way less than I thought there would be. She actually is I will go as far as to say she's a bit of a bitch at times. In fact, a lot of the time, she is not a nice person at all. She has no regard for the amount of people that she kills. She is focused on one goal, and that is revenge and domination. That's it. That's what she does, and she doesn't care what she sacrifices in order to get there, including, of course, her humanity. I have to wonder if there'll be any kind of redemption arc towards the end of the game, whether there will be any kind of internal struggle. But right now, I mean, she's just a monster. She's commanding the Zerg, and she is slaughtering everything in her path, and she flat out doesn't care. And she gives some very callous disregard. She doesn't even attempt at any point to negotiate with anybody, which is fairly unusual, I would imagine. She will just take what she wants. So instead of just being the good guy and having a clear and noble goal, this goal is not so noble, honestly. Revenge is understandable, but the extent that Kerrigan is going to in order to get it, not so much. And I find that compelling. I find that sufficiently different to... It's not just a straight up, oh, I'm a mustache-twirling villain, or, oh, I'm a misunderstood anti-hero, and so on and so forth. She's a bit more of a complex character than I thought she was. Let's just put it that way. So, overall, things are looking pretty good for this game. Looks like we may have an evolution mission, so this would be a good chance to show you that before I conclude the video. Evolution missions are done to demonstrate two different strains of a variant. In this case, I think we're evolving our MUTALIBK into something. So let's check out what we have available. Ah, I see. Okay. So in this case, it gives you access to either the Broodlord or the Viper. It's interesting that it does that, actually, because these are just regular units within Heart of the Swarm, so it's not some really interesting variant. That's actually kind of disappointing. I was hoping to see some crazy MUTALIBK variant, but in this case, it's just either you can get a Broodlord or you can get a Viper. Weirdly enough, Broodlord is morphed from a MUTALIBK in this campaign, I guess because there was no point in building Corruptors in the campaign, because they're actually a terrible unit, so that makes sense. So we can start this, and what it'll generally do is give you a little short mission which demonstrates the capabilities, and then you must choose. Choosing between Viper and Broodlord, that could be a fairly tricky choice. I mean, you're talking about there's a big, heavy aerial siege unit versus an aerial caster that will vastly decrease the effectiveness of ranged units on the enemy side. But they give you some nice little scenarios in order to test this, which is exactly what's going to be happening here. Launch problems, well, there weren't any, which was nice. I mean, this is a game, obviously, that's been criticized for having no LAN mode, although it does have an offline mode. I was able to play offline when BattleNet went down earlier for maintenance today, so that wasn't a problem, which is pretty sweet. I mean, obviously, I can't play the multiplayer offline, but the single player seems to work just fine. The stability is rock solid. I have had one crash in about 8 hours. That's never happened again. Not really sure what actually caused it in the first place. It's really, really odd. And I've also had that bug that I was showing you earlier with the repeated voices. But other than that, it's rock solid. Really, really good launch. What appears to be a really good expansion. You could talk for days about the multiplayer. There's no real question about that because, of course, we're talking about one of the most respected esports in the world here. So, yeah, of course you're going to talk about the multiplayer till the end of time. But the single player is impressive, I think. I'm enjoying it more than I was enjoying Wings of Liberty. I think, again, the inherent cheesiness of Blizzard stories is blunted somewhat by the fact that you have way more interesting characters, and playing as the Zerg is a really intriguing idea. It was really good in the original Starcraft as well. I think it's even better here, simply because they have even more interesting, weird, and wonderful characters and great designs. Very, very cool indeed. Into the tunnel we go, and as you can see here, these are MUTALIBKs with little things on their backs, so I can actually morph these MUTALIBKs into Broodlords, which had a reputation in the original Wings of Liberty for being somewhat overpowered when combined with Infestors. That has been nerfed since then, although admittedly they are still equally powerful in the campaign, because Infestors and their actual spell itself, Fungal Growth, is instant, rather than a projectile. But anyway, I am sort of going a little bit too long about Heart of the Swarm. I'm enjoying the campaign an awful lot, and I think that this is a nice return to form here for Blizzard. Something that we were hoping would happen. You know, Wings was a good game, certainly, but the actual expansion itself seems to have outdone it significantly in terms of its single player. Good cutscenes, good voice acting, decent scripts, some cringeworthy lines here and there, as is to be expected with Blizzard products, but definitely better, in my honest opinion, than the original Wings of Liberty. So, that is currently available. You can grab it only from the Blizzard store, actually, or as a physical copy. Bear in mind, of course, that you do, in fact, need... Oh man, I'm losing a lot of muters there. That sucks. I forgot there was a bunker. Yeah, let's be a little bit careful. Bear in mind, of course, you do need an original copy of Wings of Liberty in order to actually play this game. Otherwise, you will not be able to do anything with it. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you like Starcraft or you are just getting into the esports side of things, then please do go check out my channel, TotalBiscuit, which is pretty much nothing but Starcraft content. It's content about my esports team, the team that I sponsor, which goes by the name of Axiom Esports. We have 5 guys in Korea that play together in some of the best leagues in the world, which is really awesome. And I also do casts, and I will actually be in Dallas on Thursday to do just that. I'll be flying out to Dallas, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. It will be the first big Heart of the Swarm tournament in the US, so I'm going to be casting there alongside other personalities like Husky Starcraft, Day 9, and many other great fellows. Thank you very much for watching, folks. This has been a look at the Heart of the Swarm single-player campaign, and I'll see you next time.